On this episode, we're going to tell you how you can think of your website as an employee and how, if you put it to work, it can transform your sales funnel.
The idea of thinking of your website as an employee transforms the way you integrate it into your company, transforms the way you think about paying it, because it's an employee. And I would really urge you to watch last week's episode, which was entitled How to Intelligently Spend $100,000 on a Website. We chronicled the journey that we took with a small real estate startup in southern India, and we worked with them to transform the way they look at a website and the way that they integrated their website into their sales process and their support process. And it ended up actually causing a wee bit of a mini revolution because it also changed the way the industry looked at them. Now, this week is actually an extension of that episode. We still have to qualify why and how we spent $100,000 on building this website. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's kind of what we have to do again this week.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's start the show.
Let's start the show.
When you think that something as intangible as design and communications can't really affect your bottom line,
you usually end up with marketing and advertising tools that don't help you inherently mitigate your business risk.
that's what this podcast is about.
A behind-the-scenes look at how we go about doing what we do, mitigating business risk. I'm Jude Lazaro.
And I'm Mark Lazaro. And you are watching our weekly video podcast.
So, where do we start this conversation?
Well, most real estate companies are forced to use a large sales team in order to be successful. Their websites usually don't have much information that the customer needs. The responsibility of explaining the product and educating the customer then falls on the sales executive, a customer who may not even be interested in the product.
Right, I get you, because that energy that's expended on talking to multiple customers or potential customers or leads who may not end up buying the product is actually expensive.
So this was a huge problem in the case of Dasta. They were a small company and their business model couldn't support a large sales team. This is where thinking of your website as an employee comes into play. With Dasta, we designed a website which was just as good as the best sales manager that money can buy. It knew everything there was to know about the project. It could talk to hundreds of customers at the same time. And it was always accessible, like 24/7, 365 days in a year. Oftentimes, Dasta themselves used the website as a sales training tool for new hires.
The website was every sales executive's best friend.
Yeah.
It was a fallback that they could rely on. If they were having a bad day, a busy day, they were not well, they could offload a lot of the sales process to the system. This thing could take away functions from him and perform them at a standardized quality.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'm forced to think about is how this thing never went to sleep. Your website doesn't go to sleep.
Yeah.
And if you look at the analytics for Dasta's website, you find peak activity during the weekdays between around 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. Because think about it, the average customer was married with a small child. That's probably when he had the downtime to actually sit and think about it. So this thing was alive and kicking at an unearthly hour of 3 in the morning or 2 in the morning. The sales executives actually got to spend more quality time with paying customers.
Oh yeah, and it saved a lot of man hours in the process, freeing up the sales executive. All the boring, repetitive tasks that a regular sales executive has to do was now taken on by the website.
That's so true. And if you now come back to our grandiose title about a $100,000 website, that budget is being spent over a 5-year period. And if you look at it from the point of view of hiring an employee, that's about like $1,650 a month.
A month, yeah.
And that works out to about 1 lakh or a little over 1 lakh rupees a month.
Yeah, exactly.
That sort of a salary buys you, like you said, a sales manager, right? A decent sales manager.
Yeah.
And it now starts to put this in perspective because you have someone to fall back on that's doing all of this for you and is not just someone who has full context, but it's also always on. And when you think of the value that a website can bring you as an employee from that point of view, you start to see that it makes your sales team happier, it makes your support team happier. They've got more time that they can spend with a paying customer. And if you think about just customer experience, it's never possible for you to be able to provide every single customer with the same experience. Because customer experience is subject to serendipity. It depends on your particular interface with the company and that particular moment or that particular person that you met or that particular day that you arrived at, and that happened to be your customer experience that you received. The website somehow tends to be able to tie all of that in and sort of yoke the responsibility of a unified customer experience, because not only is it constantly facing a customer with the same information and the same tone, it's also kind of setting the same tone for the sales executive and the support executive as well. And when you look at it from that point of view, the brand value that it brings to play in a mix of this sort is immense.
And this doesn't necessarily have to apply to the real estate industry. The logic is universal.
Absolutely, because any sales process or support process that has an agent involved will definitely benefit. So, can we now do what I've been trying to do for the last 2 shows? Can we show people what's behind that pricing button?
Yes, but before we get to that, let me set up some context. Anyone who's in the market to buy a new apartment today has to go through this very troublesome ordeal of finding the right building, picking the right floor, and choosing the right apartment number. On top of that, they have to go through the whole legal process of buying the apartment and dealing with all the paperwork. It's a very time-consuming, and it takes up a lot of manpower.
It's frustrating.
It's definitely frustrating.
Actually, I have a weird analogy for this. I somehow feel that buying real estate in South India, okay, let's just say buying real estate in India, the onboarding process that comes with it is almost like playing Jenga and Tetris at the same time, and all you have to do to make it a drinking game is throw in a frustrated sales guy, because his performance will keep, sort of depleting over time, and it just gets frustrating and more frustrating and more frustrating. So, how did we solve this problem?
So, in order to reduce this frustration, what we did was we basically built this page, the pricing page on the Dasta website, and what it does is it gives customers control of picking the apartment, figuring out what's right for them. The moment someone arrives here, they can immediately start by choosing the right apartment size for them, picking a floor that they prefer. It tells you all the available floors live. You can choose one that you like and get a complete breakdown of the pricing structure. Everything from what the square foot cost is to how much your car park is, and it gives you a detailed floor plan. On top of that, you can even calculate your EMI.
Yeah, and we may be underplaying this, but trust me, just purely from experience, we've seen many real estate teams lose customers because they got their pricing wrong. Right, so there were so many errors in this onboarding process that was caused by a rogue Excel sheet.
Oh, definitely.
Right, or a older version of an Excel sheet that was supposed to compute a pricing point. And what we did with this was take that load off the salesperson or off the human being and say, listen, a machine can do this really, really well. And we built an algorithm that was robust enough to compute all of the pricing variations that would come with each of these, apartments, and make sure that every time this guy sent out a costing, no matter if it was the 10th or the 15th or the 100th apartment that a customer was interested in, it was accurate and it was tuned to all of the variations or changes that he had made to it.
So when the customer finally lands at the building or at the marketing office, the sales executive is talking to someone who's informed, who knows what they want, and has gone through the entire product in detail.
Just to kind of support that with an anecdote, we used to do regular strategy meetings with this team, and what we learned, I remember on one meeting, was this sales guy says, hey, hang on, I got a customer who walked in yesterday. To sort of set that up, this guy had been following them for about a month or two. He knew everything about the product, and he'd spent, I think, a couple of weeks maybe with his wife choosing an apartment on the pricing page. And he walked in after understanding which apartment he wanted, at what price he was going to buy it, and also using the feature at the bottom of the page, which gave him that 3-page PDF. So he walks in with the printout of this apartment that he's chosen, lands it on the table, and sits in front of this guy and says, so I'd like to negotiate this product. And that is literally a demonstration of the fact that he had onboarded himself, literally. He'd come 3 or 4 levels into the sales funnel, approached this guy and said, boom, this is what I'm buying.
Exactly. So I hope by now you've understood why you should be thinking of your website as an employee. Look at how many functions it's performing in your sales pipeline and your CRM pipeline.
No, absolutely. And that deep integration of a website into all of these departments, which actually goes beyond just sales and support. It went into finance and legal, and it actually disrupted the way they worked and then refined it, right? And now you come back to thinking of this as an employee and say, oh wow, okay, I've now hired an employee that's working in multiple departments at the same time and making sure that they all get along.
And at the end of the day, it's all about transparency, isn't it? When a customer goes through this entire website, he's gone through all the content and has gone through all the pricing. He knows exactly what's right for him. When he ends up buying the apartment, there's no buyer's regret.
I agree. I like that, buyer's regret. We spoke about treating or considering your website, as an employee, and then building function into it and extracting value from it as an employee 4 years ago.
Yeah, we did.
And we've been doing it, for much longer than that as well. Now, this is where I must make this point. If you take any value away from this, your website is not just a bunch of code. Your website is not UI. Your website is not a fresh look. You don't change it like a fad, especially when you now give it the context of it being your employee.
Yeah, and just the text does not make up for content, right?
I like that.
It's not just some paragraphs that someone wrote for you. Content is a lot more of an immersive experience with all the rich possibilities that's available to you on the web right now. This case study sort of proves how useful a website can be, not just something that sits on the internet and looks pretty. And you can see how deeply this thing integrates into each of the departments. It's doing all the functions that humans are generally not the best at, like all the numbers and the calculations. It's performing all the menial tasks.
So you're actually taking the humans in your system and treating them better.
Yeah.
You'll have a happier set of humans.
Putting them to better use, yeah.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because let's clarify that. We are not talking about putting human beings out of a job here. We're talking about augmenting the human being, because he is good at doing certain aspects of this job and he's not good at doing certain aspects of this job. Just like this piece of technology is good at doing some aspects of it and not doing some aspects of it. And it's about telling the difference between the two, right? And being able to mesh the two together so that you get the right output from it.
Exactly.
So you don't have to spend $100,000 on your website. That's not the directive, right? You can spend less, you can spend more. The idea is that budget is being spent over a 5-year period. And if you look at it from the point of view of hiring an employee, that's about like $1,650 a month.
A month, yeah.
And that works out to about 1 lakh or a little over 1 lakh rupees a month.
Yeah, exactly.
That sort of a salary buys you, like you said, a sales manager. You've visited Dasta.in, you've spent some time on it, you've spent time with this episode and the episode that came before it, There's links in the show notes to a lot of the things that we've spoken about. And what we want you to take away from this is the idea of changing the way you look at the investment that you make in your website, because it can deeply integrate with your entire organization and almost become the equivalent of a super employee that you pay on a monthly basis. That should transform the way you think about it. That should transform the way you think about extracting value from it. And that should definitely transform the time that you spend building one. Yeah?
Yeah.
Awesome. I like this show. That brings us to the end, right?
The end.
We've kind of run out of show notes. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, add us on LinkedIn, and subscribe to us on YouTube. We are different levels of loopy and different levels of serious on all of these social media platforms. And depending on your choice of social media platform, you can tap into different sides of us. If there is anything we'd like to leave you with, it's your website is your employee. Be nice to it.
Be nice to your website.
See you guys later. Bye.
Bye.